Thank you. Welcome, everybody. First time for me in Russia, in Moscow. Not the first time, actually. I speak about the topic, mobile web. Yeah, forget it. Device web. Forget it because mobile these days means just nothing. It's too vague of a term. Mobile what? I mean, the first time, not that many months ago, maybe a year ago, it was my son. My son is a teenager, he's 15 years old. I brought him to a conference in Rome a year ago, and I was talking about the mobile web, talking about libraries and frameworks like jQuery Mobile, like Bootstrap, like AngularJS, these kind of things. And my son heard me say so many times, mobile web, mobile web. At some point I asked the audience, do you have any questions? And my son raised his hand and said, Dad. And that was embarrassing. So imagine from the Dad. Okay, what do you mean by mobile web? Mobile what? Do you mean a smartphone? Do you mean a tablet? Do you mean what? That was a great point. And that set the beginning of the mobile, the dead of mobile web, the beginning of the device web. So we're talking about a thing called feature detection, which is a topic fairly popular in the sense that a lot of people think that a lot of developers and influencers as well think that we are so smart that we can just focus on detecting which features, developer features, are enabled on a given browser, whether mobile, smartphone, tablet, or so, and so forth. I will compare feature detection client side, so relying on what we can figure out from the browser, with server side feature detection, which leads to looking into pros and cons of responsive web design, and then I'll finish up introducing Wurfel. If you never heard about this framework, Wurfel, even though it's not, particularly popular, it's the framework that a couple of companies in the world use to do their server-side feature and device detection. These two companies are Google and Facebook. There are also other companies like PayPal, Twitter, Amazon. The big giants use this framework, okay, to do their own device-related things on the server side. Developers, we are not scared, be honest. Imagine you're talking to yourself in front of a mirror. You're alone. Nobody can hear you. We are. A developer, the typical developer, is not scared of working long hours, but the typical developer is scared if it doesn't look smart. We want to be smart. So we say, why on earth? Why the heck? We should have 3, 4, 5, 6 different HTML views when, if we are smart, we can manage to adapt, to have a framework that we write to adapt one logical view to nearly any screen size. So how would you like to be? Are you smart? Would you like to be smart or not so smart? Everybody wants to look smart, so everybody goes for responsive web design, which is the name of the methodology for building many of the today's websites that pretend they are device-oriented, with the idea that you just think of the schema, the logical layout once, and then you have some CSS files to adjust that logical layout to the details, the specific capabilities of the screen size, and you don't care about the device. You only care about how large is the screen. That's it. Now, will this approach work for everybody? In your opinion, why on earth people, consumers, even developers, buy so many different types of devices. A tablet, a phablet, a mini tablet, a smartphone, a legacy phone, a this or that, a wearable device, a Google Glasses, an iWatch. Why? If for developers, everybody is, okay, it's a different CSS file. So a CSS file costs nothing, a device costs a lot of money, but this is what we're doing. Now, another point, web performance. Do you really care about web performance, especially on mobile? That's the point. Everybody is ready to swear that, oh, we do care. We at whatever is the company name, we absolutely care about performance, about scalability, about this, about that. But very few people realize that at the end of the day, a desktop is not the same as a mobile device. It's a matter of physics, numbers, math. This is a screen, so that represents the typical screen you find on a desktop. The size of this screen is fairly large. Even the size of the screen typically associated with a laptop is fairly large when you compare even to the largest smartphone. It's 4 or 5 inches versus 13, 16, 24. It's numbers. So it's a matter of physics. Devices and desktops are not the same for the size of the screen, but also for the power, the computing power. But I see, if I look around, a lot of misconceptions as far as mobile devices are concerned, and the so-called mobile web. Many people say, my site is good enough on mobile devices, meaning my site display on. It doesn't matter how it displays, it just displays. It can be read. It doesn't matter how. It can be read on mobile devices. This is nice. Mobile users expect their pages to be slow. Which reminds me of a very nice web page that I found. If you travel to Rome, and you are in the Rome airport, and you want to have some Wi-Fi, you find out that the Wi-Fi is free. But you have to go through a wizard in which blah, 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 blah. You try to connect. They say, want you go online? Yes, I want to go online. And there's a beautiful page that says, would you like to be spammed? So if you want, they don't use the word spam, but that's the meaning. Okay, they say, if you want to receive emails, blah, 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 please provide your details. And then you have to click to say, no, I'm not interested, thanks. So it's obvious. It's stupidly obvious. Nobody wants to be spammed. And how can you believe that mobile users want to have their pages to be slow? It's developers that think that mobile users would like to have, would find acceptable to have pages slow. Or, that's nice, we provide an app. So we don't care about the web, we'll just provide an app for that. For those stupid idiots, okay, who wants to stick doing business with us over devices. We'll provide an app. I agree that the speed, the fluidity of a native app is incomparably faster and better than any web page, even super optimized for devices. But the point is that an app is just not the same as. You need to have probably both. But we are talking about different things. Mobile users only care about doing things. This is absolutely right, but that's the reason why you should take into serious account device web. Just because mobile users on the go, only care about doing important things. And if for your business, using the web is important, if it's part of the business, no other way for you, it's a business, strong business reason, other than improving the quality of your web. Mobile users love to pinch and zoom. Yeah, they love it because it's a matter, do you love food? Well, love it or not, you need food. So love it or not, you need to pinch and zoom because developers don't care about creating better sites. More info about will provide an app. How many apps? The web is device neutral, so you can access anything you deploy over the web regardless of the operating system. How many apps? And how would you write those apps? Because when it comes to writing apps, iOS, and Android, Windows Phone, okay, I have a BlackBerry, bad for you, change your phone. But even if you have, okay, I have an Android. Oh, Android. Android what? There are so many. Probably today, if you want to really reach a wide audience, an Android native app means probably 2 apps. Think about that. And then how written. And okay, native, that's the best, obviously, in terms of speed and user experience. But hybrid, so mixing web content with native content, essentially using web views within the UI of the native app, is a much faster way of developing apps. It also has a lot of other benefits, but okay, if you have interaction, if your app is expected to interact deeply with a user, a hybrid approach is not really the best you can have, which is good instead for read-only, just scroll in presenting information. So there are not so obvious choices to be made when it comes to, okay, we'll provide an app. My site is good enough on mobile devices, but have you ever considered latency? So the interval between request and response, which can be up to 300 milliseconds. And how about connection? 3G, which is the type of connectivity that most mobile users concretely experience outside of your offices where you test your app, your websites. 3G can be up to 5 times slower than Wi-Fi. And you have, more importantly, no control at all over these things. So there are essentially quite a few misconceptions around mobile web development. So the golden rules of any mobile strategy that I feel to summarize is, number 1, ensure that your sites are accessible to devices of any type. And accessible means probably more than what the dictionary tells you that accessible means. So accessible in a comfortable way, so providing a decent, at least, user experience. This can be done recognizing and intelligently serving devices. It doesn't mean that you have to figure out exactly, literally, the type of the device. So you don't have to know whether the browser is version 1, 2, 3, 4 point whatever of Firefox or of this or that. It's the class of device, the form factor of the device that is really important. So it's important that you figure out as reliably as possible whether the requesting device is a smartphone, a tablet, maybe a mini tablet, maybe a large screen. You decide, you figure out how many classes of devices you're interested in serving comfortably. But once you have figured out the list of these classes of devices, which could even be just one, everything is the same. Acceptable. But make sure that there is a business reason behind this and not the will, the desire, the wish to look actually smart. And once you have treated well enough all possible devices, at that point, and only as the second step, you can provide an app for some of the platforms that you are interested in. But consider that to provide an app, you have to be really well aware how users visit your site. So you need to have stats, numbers, evidence that say iOS users are larger in number than Android users or Windows Phone users, and then maybe iOS users come mostly using iPhone 5 or iPhone 6 or whatever. Or if you have Android, most of your users, if they come with Android 4 or with older, in a significant number, with older devices running Android 2 point something. So you need evidence for this, and only at that point you can target the app in terms of the operating system and also in terms of the features. And also from a psychological perspective, if you implement your mobile strategy in these two steps, you are giving a clear message to users. We care about everybody, but we have our beloved and preferred customers. So if you want to be a preferred customer of us, please upgrade your phone or become a premium customer or whatever it is, depending on the business. Now, what you can do to implement a mobile strategy based on these two steps. Responsive web design, RWD, as a methodology to build most of modern websites is good and bad at the same time. I like to say that it's good because as good as first aid can be. If you feel sick all of a sudden, you want to see a doctor, you probably want to see to the hospital for some first aid. At that point, doctors there have the responsibility of fixing you as soon as possible and letting you walk away. So when you walk out of the hospital after having received first aid, well, you can probably walk on your own legs, but you can hardly run a marathon. So would you just walk or would you run a marathon? That's the point that can be made around the role of responsive web design. As I say things, it's great because it provides a solution that mostly works, can be made to work with any combination of devices. But I think it's a responsibility of the development team and architects to just dig deeper within what responsive web design actually does to see if in the intricacies of the features there's something that can hurt you in the mid or long run. Essentially, responsive web design is based on a technology called the CSS, media queries. And media queries is a standard, W3C standard, and it's essentially about having conditional style sheets that are automatically applied by browsers depending on detected conditions. So at the end of the day, what you do here is you tell browsers, look, I have a bunch of CSS files that can be applied to this page, and I wish you apply each of these particular CSS files depending on the following Boolean expressions. In addition to that, responsive web design is also about how you write the HTML layout, and typically you should be writing that using what is called proportional layout, so essentially having a percentage-based size, which are typically just an absolute percentage, 80, 20, 25% of their container, or it can also be a percentage of the viewport size, so the entire screen. And visual breakpoints are screen sizes that you define as the segment of the screen for which you want a particular layout. So essentially you are telling the browser, look, when you hit a visual breakpoint, and a visual breakpoint is just a screen width, typically 480, 80, 100, 1200, and so forth, when the width of the screen trespasses any of these breakpoints, please, that is a condition that will force you to change the CSS. Concretely, here is a couple of examples of link HTML statements you want to use to create this conditional CSS references. You use the media attribute, which is nothing new, but before CSS media queries came out, the media attribute was only able to receive values like screen or print, and we use that to select a different CSS, for example, to print a web page without background images and just essentially limiting to plain text. Now the syntax of the media attribute is larger and essentially is only screen. So when you are displaying this page, and what follows is a Boolean expression that indicates, according to the official syntax of CSS media queries created by W3C, a few values. So in this particular example, I'm saying that we want to use a view480.css if the maximum width of the screen is 480 pixels. So for 0 to 480 pixels of screen size, this is the CSS that the browser will apply, and whatever follows is just ignored, because browsers process link statements as they happen, as they appear, and they stop at first match. The other following link statement says, look, if the screen is instead up to 800 pixels, you use view 80. Of course, if the screen is in between these two sizes, the former doesn't apply, because if it's larger than 480, this is ignored, and this is the CSS that the browser falls down. You can have a bunch of other properties here to create your Boolean expression. Here is the full list. Device width, device height, width and height. Of course, they can be combined with min and max prefixes. Okay, device width and device height, they ignore them. They have nearly no value, and they are going to be declared obsolete with the next upcoming version of CSS media queries. So this is what really matters, width and height, because they represent the rendering viewport, the browser window. Now, on mobile devices, so tablet and smartphones, the browser window and the device width is the same because all apps run full screen. But width and height refer to the browser size. Another interesting property is orientation, which tells you whether the browser is running in portrait or landscape mode. This is really, really powerful because it's the only way you have to switch CSS when users of a tablet, for example, rotate the tablet and it passes from a portrait to landscape or vice versa. Not all content automatically fit nicely in a vertical or horizontal screen. So having a way to automatically change and just move things around is absolutely helpful. Aspect ratio, I still have to figure out what is for. Okay, they say it's the ratio between width and height, and it's typically value like 16/9. Okay, I never run into an app where this aspect in particular was used, but it's still part of the standard. Okay, the question now is, where does mobile fit in responsive web design? There is nothing here that has to do with devices, with the recognition that we are on a smartphone or on a tablet. To cut a long story short, and to reserve time for more examples. When you go with a responsive web design solution, you are treating in the same way, say, a tablet and a desktop browser window resized to the size of a tablet screen. So be aware that with a responsive web design solution, you are making no distinction at all between a browser window on your PC connected to a Wi-Fi that is resized to 800 pixels wide and a full screen tablet on a 3G, on a slow 3G. It's the same. So the same amount of content is downloaded. The same large images are downloaded. The same amount of HTML is downloaded. The same JavaScript is downloaded and run. The same use cases are presented and offered to users. The same user experience. Now, it may or may not be good. It depends on the particular business, the particular website. But be aware that in responsive web design, there is nothing that has minimally to do with mobile and device detection. And they make a point of saying, we don't care about mobile devices. Do you? So this is the question about responsive web design. I'm not saying it's good or bad. That's not the point. My point is, if you really care about devices, about offering device users the best possible experience, because it's critical for your business, I invite you to first explore other options and then maybe fall down to plain, simple, not so simple actually, responsive web design solution. But why server-side solutions that say, look, when a request comes to my web server, every browser sends me the user agent string that identifies uniquely the browser itself. So any server-side feature or device detection passes through the user agent string. Why, I wonder, server-side work scare so many people? Because of this. This is nearly unintelligible for humans, only for some computers. This is an example of a user agent string. It's nearly impossible to track this down to a concrete class or type of device. Now, if you spend some time on strings like this, you can figure out that when there is GT-P, that's GT stands for Galaxy Tab. So in the end, this is a tablet running Android 4.0. But if you only stop at Android, okay, it runs Android, nice. But you have no clue about whether it's a smartphone or a tablet or whatever it is. You need to recognize, to detect devices. You need to have something like this, a sort of dictionary where the key column contains user agent strings, and then you have another column that I generically call the capabilities, where someone tells you, puts there, the list of things that the browser, the device browser can or cannot do, like support for video streaming, support for certain types of images, support for certain features of CSS, operating system, details of the browser, and so forth. If you can detect browsers, you are making yourself so powerful to serve device-specific views. I'm not saying again that this is the perfect solution. We don't live in a perfect world. Not in this version, maybe in the next, in version World 2.0. That would be better. But today, even if you go with a server-side device detection you are running into troubles, because it means that you have to create, probably from scratch, multiple views. And, well, on a large site, it's like having multiple websites. But the smart developer, yeah, I'm smart. That's why I use responsive web design, because in that case, I have just one view. Yes, but you're going to have multiple CSS files. So the question is, would you like to have multiple Razor file? And I say Razor looking at ASP.NET MVC. Okay, would you like to have multiple HTML views, or with a common collection of CSS files, or would you like to have one HTML view and multiple CSS? But in this case, CSS doesn't do magic. The number of things you can change on a given fixed HTML view with CSS are limited. You can, for example, move things around. You can flow them vertically or horizontally. You can use absolute or relative positioning. You can maybe resize percentually fonts or containers. And of course, you can hide things. I don't need this. But look, if you think that hiding things via CSS is a smart move, makes you smart, I'm afraid you are not so smart, because you are downloading things to hide things. It's fantastic, it's beautiful. Especially on mobile devices over 3G, you are downloading 3 megs of stuff to show only half a meg. Why don't downloading only the fucking half meg you need? This is the point of responsive web design. If you want to, I have only 70, oh, there's about it's a 1, actually. It looks like a 7. It's a 1. So I don't know. They subtracted me an hour. Anyway, so if you want to have some fun, Google for best responsive web design sites. One of the first links you find is to the site called vangoghmuseum.nl. It's reckoned to be one of the best responsive websites in the world. It's well done, period. No question on this. Now, I invite you to, for example, using the F12 developer tools of Internet Explorer or similar tools with other browsers, to actually count how much it takes down, how much it downloads. And try that with different user agents, for a tablet, for a smartphone, whatever. It's constantly 3 megs, 3 megs and 20, regardless. Try that. It's so easy. It's absolutely repeatable. But in general, try to do that to see exactly how much stuff is downloaded, using different user agents for a smartphone, for a tablet, for desktop. It's always the same unless some hard work is made in the responsive HTML-only solution, okay, to optimize things. So unless you spend a lot of work and time to optimize, a responsive web design just takes down the entire website. And when things go really complicated, a responsive website solution ends up having multiple HTML layouts in the same view. So it's one logical view with 4 5 6 different layouts. So you are downloading 4 times the amount of HTML to hide all but one layout. So it's absolutely stupid in terms of performance. Or better yet, it could be made so stupid so the developers who opt for responsive web design because it's so smart does exactly the opposite if it blindly plays by those rules without trying to capture a bigger picture. The importance of having device-specific views and the importance of serving intelligent markup. Now, let me give you a few demos. Let me start with a quick, very quick example of responsive web design. I'm not going to show you a complex website. But I think this is enough to see the point. So imagine that, okay, in the beginning, okay, we have something like this. So the screen size is small, and the one HTML layout is displayed. As the screen size gets larger, at some point there is a specific visual breakpoint, so a specific number of pixels, okay? And now, apparently I only changed the color, the background color, and maybe the size of the border. But actually it's a completely different HTML layout. Okay? Now, you can do both things. You can simply change background colors, or probably you can just adapt float attributes to move things around on the same HTML layout if that gives you exactly what you want to achieve. Or in the worst case, however, you have to completely change the HTML layout. But both layouts, the red and the yellow, must be downloaded in the same request. So the amount of stuff you take down from the server is the double, at least. But if you want to have more, so if you have other, again, this is a third layout. Look, if you think that most of the time you can only adjust things around with float attributes and percentages, it comes relatively easy if you only have two scenarios, mobile and whatever else. But if you have to consider small mobile, smartphone, tablets, 3, 4, 5 different scenarios, the complexity gets exponential. So you find it easier to have multiple layouts, but you have multiple layouts independent. All of them are downloaded at the same time at the beginning, and this takes up to the mountains, okay, the time it takes to display the page for the first time. Okay, this is responsive web design. Just briefly a look at the source code here. This page had just one container, and then in this case only 4 different paragraphs, but in general each of this is a different HTML template. So what I'm doing via CSS is simply switching between these 4 blocks. In the beginning, by default, only the small block, the red one, is displayed. The other 3 are hidden. And in the media query expression for width 400, 600, and 900, most that I do is changing background colors. Okay? And essentially hide 3 and display 1. I'm juggling with HTML templates. I'm presenting the worst case scenario, but the worst case scenario is far more common than many think. Okay, here is instead another approach. And this ASP.NET application, I'm using a server-side framework, Wurfel, to do device detection and then serve the predefined HTML markup, but only the one that applies. Okay, now the sample application here detected that, oops, you are coming my way using a desktop browser, but this site, by design, doesn't have nothing to offer to desktop browsers. Try using a mobile or a tablet. Okay, I don't have a mobile here, but if I, in Internet Explorer, if I hit F12, I can change the user agent string and pick up, for example, Apple Safari iPad. So after that, the page automatically is refreshed, and the server receives the user agent string of an iPad. So it serves down just the content it was supposed to serve to iPads. Okay, so imagine something like this. Okay? Now, if I resize, it's, okay, it still remains a tablet over there. If I change this to something like, okay, Windows Phone 8, okay, I now get a smartphone view. Okay, you may have not noticed that, but the buttons, the menu is different, and more importantly, there is more information displayed here. This is to say that with this approach, it's much, much easier for you to serve each device class, a specific set of use cases. In particular, I said, look, on a smartphone, I want to give you, this is a live score website, I want to give you also the current scores. For some reasons, I don't want to do that on tablets and whatever. Once more, I can change to yet another user agent string for a very old-fashioned device, and I can have yet another view. Now, my project is not magic in the sense that my project has one set of controllers, but it has multiple views. So I have, you see over there, for what is logically the index view, I have copies. But I manage those copies server-side, and only one of them is downloaded. Yes, it can be problematic to handle things, but nothing is simple. So don't think that responsive web design is so easy. It's so easy in demos. In the real world, it's much more complicated than it appears. But then, in the end, it's up to you to weigh out approaches. But my point is making you aware that there are options. And finally, what I think is probably the best of all, there is a version of the Wurfel framework. By the way, the Wurfel framework is available as a server-side framework for nearly any language. It's for Java, it's for PHP, it's for .NET, it's for Ruby, Python, C++. Wurfel.js is the JavaScript version of the framework. And while the server-side Wurfel has a license cost and it's free only for open source project, Wurfel.js is free for everybody to use, even in commercial applications. So there is really no, it's like jQuery. You take and you use it, period. Now, let me give you an example of this. Sample app. Oh, this is the most advanced example. Let me go back and start with a basic example. Okay, it says I'm a desktop. If I use F12 and I change this to be iPad, it says, look, I'm a tablet now. But I can do more. I can say, look, send Xbox One, and it says, look, I'm a smart TV. So it automatically detects devices, and you're not paying anything for this. Source code. It takes you to just have this simple line, okay, in your pages, and that's all of it. You don't need more than this. Wurfel.io, Wurfel.js, okay, debug equals true if you are debugging. That's it. Now, Woolful.js is not a JS file. Okay? It's simply an endpoint. But it's an endpoint that processes the user agent string, figures out the capabilities of the device, and this happens with zero charge, no charge at all for you, and all that happens is that it downloads this JavaScript code that's evaluated and beyond debug information looks like this. Okay? This is the effect of using Woolful.js. You have an object like this in your DOM, which tells you as a constant whether or not the browser is mobile, and here is it's desktop or whatever else. Okay, it's called is mobile, but actually it answers the question, is it a desktop? So yes, if it's a desktop, no in all other cases. The complete device name, Xbox One, okay, it's a generic name. It doesn't give you many details. And the form factor. The form factor is one of, I think, 10 possible strings. So smartphone, tablet, smart TV, robot. It tells you even if the page is being viewed through the web view control in a native app. So check out the documentation for all possible things. And based on that, you can do something like this. When the DOM content is loaded, or in document ready in jQuery, the form factor variable here is instantiated with woolful.formFactor, and based on that, you can set up a switch statement and ask from the client your server to give you the markup for smartphone, tablet, and so forth. And then, after that, you just load the URL into the body using jQuery. I mean, this is an example that runs like this. Again. There's loading, and then, so the loading is the time it takes to figure out what is the markup, receiving the markup, and displays the markup. Now, final statement.
Do you want to have time for questions or not?
Yeah. Final sentence and then questions. Final point here. Look, case. You can add case branches anytime you want. So you can start day one with a responsive solution that works great for desktops, because responsive web design works beautifully for desktops. And then you just add here a case branch and, of course, create a bunch of views on the server. So you can add support, specific web support for smartphones, tablets, and whatever you want, anytime you need it. So extensibility of the solution is absolutely easy to achieve. That's it. Questions?
Okay. We have 2 minutes for questions, but 2 minutes we have. Please, go ahead.
As for me, this code in JavaScript integrated into HTML dealing with CSS looks a bit ugly. And Android have different approach to this. And as you know, when you write an Android application, I can do XML layout, and you having to deal with this style of things. So do you think that Android approach should go into browsers and the web and mobile web particular will should go in the same way. So take approach that Google takes in Android.
I mean, the real point, I think, is whether or not for your particular business, your particular scenario, you need or not to have the web covered, okay? I assume that you want to cover all users coming your way through the website. So this approach is not necessarily against or mutually exclusive with having a native application. So we are talking about having a web solution. Now, there are not that many ways in which you can have web content delivered to mobile devices. You can ignore devices and take the responsive approach. So it's one HTML that with CSS adapts. Otherwise, you have to detect.
Okay, do you think that Android layout can go into and replace HTML, for example?
But what do you mean? You mean do you mean just the XML file that expresses the Android?
They wait to express layouts and to mark up the content that displays in application. Could it be possible?
Okay, just
Web 5 Nolo, for example.
Let me see if I got it right. I think I got the specific point of your question. You mean, is it feasible to have a sort of super language that describes the user interface, blah, blah, blah? Okay, not that it's not possible. To my knowledge, nobody does that. Okay?
Okay,
so
I beg your pardon, but we have to stop this discussion. You can continue. I hope you will.
yeah, sure, absolutely. I will be available, so we can talk.
Let's thanks to the reporter.
Thank you guys for your time.
And now we have the second.